Ever. Like, catch yourself pausing before you answer a really tough question,
Oh, absolutely.
just to kind of gather your
Yeah,
thoughts.
like taking a moment to, really think things through usually makes for a better answer, right?
Sure. And that's what I find so fascinating about this deep dive we're doing. We're looking at this paper, right? It's exploring whether large language models, those AI systems that are, everywhere these days,
Everybody's talking about them.
exactly. It's about whether they can actually learn to do the same thing,
Hmm.
to pause and think before they speak. The paper is called Quiet-STaR. Language models can teach themselves to think before speaking.
Catchy title, right?
It really is. So we've talked about LLMs before and,
Mm.
how they're already amazing at like mimicking language, like writing poems, coding, all sorts of things.
Crazy what they can do.
I know, it's wild. But when it comes to actual reasoning skills, I don't know. I feel like there's still ways to go.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly. I mean, they're good. Surprisingly good at sounding like a human, but actual logical thinking, often they miss the mark.
Yeah, that's kind of the big question here. This Quiet-STAR research is trying to tackle that.
Mm.
Can we teach LLMs to actually reason things out before they just spit out an answer? And, like, what does that even mean for the future of AI if we can?
It's a huge question. I mean, think about it. If we want AI to help us solve these big, messy problems we're facing, it has to be able to do more than just repeat stuff, right? It needs to actually think for itself.
Okay, so how does this whole Quiet-STAR thing work? They have this really helpful visual in the paper, figure one. Basically, they're training the LLM to generate its own thoughts.
Like giving it a little mental scratch pad to work things out on.
Interesting.
And it's not, full sentences or anything. It's these short bursts of internal code tokens. They represent the thought process.
So the LLM is reading text, but simultaneously it's like creating these little thought bubbles
Mm.
to help it understand what it's reading.
Exactly. And these little bubbles, they aren't just random gibberish. The system is learning which thought patterns actually lead to better predictions, more accurate responses.
And this is where it gets really kind of cool, right? This whole thinking thing is happening at the same time as the LLM is doing its regular language processing stuff.
Yeah, they've done some really clever things to make it work computationally because,
Yeah, because if it had to stop and think every time.
it would take forever.
Exactly. So it's
Yeah.
like dot processing and thinking at the same time.
In parallel, yeah, it's almost as if it's like having this conversation with itself in the background while it's also trying to, make sense of what you've asked it to do. And the crazy thing is, it actually learns to trust its own internal voice.
So it's not just thinking randomly. It actually learns which thoughts are helpful.
Exactly. That's the learn phase, right?
Yeah.
It rewards itself for generating thoughts that actually lead to a better outcome.
Okay, so it's like a feedback loop. The more it thinks effectively, the better it gets at thinking effectively. That sounds a lot like what is it, meta learning.
Spot on. It's learning how to learn, essentially.
Wild. That's huge.
It is huge, especially if you want to see LLMs really reach their potential.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, but does it actually work? Like, does Quiet-STAR actually make these LLMs better at reasoning?
Yeah.
The million-dollar question. So they tested it. They used a couple of those standard reasoning tasks, Common Sense QA and GSMAK, kind of like standardized tests for LLMs.
How'd they do?
They aced it. I mean, Quiet-STAR significantly outperformed LLMs that weren't using this whole thinking process.
No way. And those tests weren't part of its training data, right?
Nope. This is what's so cool. It's zero shot. Like, imagine taking a test on something you've never specifically studied for and just crushing it.
It's like that eureka
Hmm.
moment, but the LLM is having it on its own.
Exactly.
Wow, that is huge. So this isn't just some cool idea. It actually works.
That's the real deal. And it has big implications. Think about how we're trying to improve LLM reasoning now, right? It takes tons and tons of hand-labeled data, which is super time-consuming and expensive.
Yeah, it's a huge bottleneck. Right. Quiet-STAR could be a path to way more data-efficient AI, which would be a game changer.
Okay, now this part really blew my mind. They found that the longer the thoughts were allowed to be, the better the LLM did on the reasoning tasks. What's going on there?
So that suggests it's not just about having lots of thoughts. It's about the quality, the depth of those thoughts.
So the longer it can kind of chew on a problem, the better it understands it.
Seems that way.
That makes sense when you think about how we learn, right?
Yeah.
But here's my question. If these thoughts are just code, can we even understand them?
That's the million-dollar question. It's like we've given it this ability to think, but we don't have a clear window into those
It's
thoughts.
kind of a black box still.
In a way, yeah. But what we do know is that Quiet-STAR is a massive leap forward.
Totally. And this reminds me, the paper said Quiet-STAR doesn't help on every single word, right?
You're remembering correctly. What's really interesting is that it helps most on words that humans find tricky to.
Get out.
Yeah.
So it's like it's learning what's important, where to focus.
It's like it's developing its own intuition about language almost.
That is just, wow. It makes you think what else is possible. It's learning like how to read between the lines almost.
Right. And this is just the beginning, you know? This research is like a tiny peek into what might be possible with this stuff.
So where do we even go from here? If Quiet-STAR can already do this, what's next for these like thinking machines?
Imagine LLMs, but they're not just thinking on their own. They're debating each other, bouncing ideas around,
Oh, wow.
and coming up with even better solutions together.
Like AI brainstorming sessions.
Exactly.
That's both cool and kind of scary.
Right. It makes you wonder, like, what are the limits here? Are we about to see this whole new era of, machine intelligence?
It's a pretty big question, right? This Quiet-STAR research, it's really pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible. We're seeing these signs that maybe, just maybe, LLMs can reason, learn, even think
Uh-huh.
in ways we don't even fully get yet.
It's a wild ride.
And we're all along for it.
Mm.
It makes you wonder, if you could ask this thinking LLM anything, what would it be?
Now there's a question to end on. It really gets you thinking about what it even means for a machine to think and what that means for us.
It really does. Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder that one.
Yeah.
If you want to dive deeper into all this, check out the full Quiet-STAR paper. Links in the show notes. Definitely worth a read. Until next time, keep those questions coming and keep learning.